Okay, hi YouTube. It is 70 days until my SRS surgery. I don't have a lot to share with respect to that for this video. I want to continue the discussion instead about kind of what I brought up the other day, which is this idea that somehow there is a schism or a split in LGBT politics between the L, the G, and the B, and the T. And so I think that has been true historically. So if you look to kind of the history of the LGBT equal rights movement, it kind of kicks off, for the most part, with the Stonewall riots in the late 60s or early 70s. And you actually had sort of trans women involved in the leadership around that movement. However, as sort of time progressed, what sort of started to happen is that you had a gay and lesbian agenda kind of form that in some cases, depending on who was leading those various efforts, did or did not include trans pieces to it. And so, for example, with the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, or ENDA, you had a HRC director, the executive director, the person who runs the human rights campaign that is supposed to represent the entire LGBT spectrum, say that a trans-inclusive ENDA would pass, quote, over her dead body. Obviously not very supportive of the trans movement, and then when you had sort of ENDA come up again in the late 2000s, and kind of a trans-inclusive ENDA come out, sponsored by the HRC, so give them their credit, they did kind of change their position. Barney Franklin, who's supposed to be this champion of LGBT rights, sort of had a temper tantrum about it because he thought that the trans element would so bog down the rest of it that they would get nothing. And this idea that somehow LGBT politics and equal rights are a zero-sum game doesn't really make sense. And I think it is somewhat ironic now that trans folks actually enjoy better workplace rights, in some cases, than their gay and lesbian counterparts, where the Equal Opportunity Commission, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has ruled that trans workers are protected under the 14th Amendment, no discrimination based off of sex. And some federal courts have started to take the same position. And while that's not necessarily as good as an explicit trans-inclusive ENDA, it is obviously a very good thing for trans people. Just like gay marriage, or universal gay marriage, would be another fantastic thing for trans people, where it wouldn't even matter what your birth certificate says, or your birth sex, if gay marriage was allowed everywhere. Now, obviously, it would be better for me to be able to change my birth certificate, which the state of Ohio won't let me do. So I don't have to get married under a gay marriage if I want to marry a man, but, that's splitting hairs, and I think I will take the right to marry over the right to a straight marriage, or whatever. Doesn't matter, but, and that's why I don't think that our agendas are as split as people make them out to be. I think if we want to talk about differences of priorities, then we need to start talking about intersectionality more broadly, where, for example, the gay movement, or the feminist movement even, aren't necessarily great at including people of color, or people who have lower incomes. Typically, these are people who have difficulty organizing politically anyway, particularly around lower income, because they don't have the time to sort of invest in political activism. And so you see agendas that come out that don't necessarily include them, or don't necessarily feature them equally or as prominently as they could or should. And I think that within the LGBT community as a whole, you see that happen where, so I think if you look at California, with their recent law that they signed, you have a whole bunch of people talking about how giving trans folks access to the bathrooms they identify with is somehow bad for the rest of the universe. And It's not true. LA has already done this for years. They have no issues with it, but somehow the rest of California is now going to blow up because they made this a statewide thing instead of just a LA county school system thing. And those are the arguments where I think we do need the gay and lesbian community to stand up and point out that, no, this is clearly not true. You are basically being a fearmonger. And we haven't historically seen that sort of standing side by side from the LGBT community. The trans people always stand by those gay and lesbian initiatives, I think, because they benefit us. But those trans-specific needs, we don't have a history of seeing them sort of stood up for by the gay and lesbian community. And even today, we still see sort of the trans get sort of line item vetoed out of some of these initiatives and movements. I think that happens less than it did in the past. It still happens more than it should. And I don't think that that is really representative of an issue within the community so much as it is a representative of politicians either caving to political pressure or sort of being unwilling to deal with that. And I think that is unfortunate if we let sort of politicking get in the way of equal rights. But I think that these are sort of simple things we can overcome, and that will sort of continue to change as millennials become the driving force behind American politics rather than it being boomers or even the Gen X. So I think that will change naturally, if not sooner